Hilde Mangold is a name you've probably never heard. She is one of countless female scientists whose contributions have been lost and died a young and tragic death that caused her to be gone too soon and without receiving proper credit for her scientific contributions. Hilde Mangold was born on October 20th, 1898 in Gotha, which is a province in central Germany. Not much is known about her family, but her father was a soap factory owner named Ernest Preschelt, and her mother was Gertrude Preschelt. She was the middle child, and her family were well-to-do Protestants. Hilde attended the university at Jena in Germany for 2 semesters, and then did 2 more semesters at the University of Frankfurt. Frankfurt is where she met Hans Biermann and heard his lecture on experimental embryology that led to her pursuing the field. Hilde enrolled at the Zoological Institute of Freiburg in Germany in 1921 for her PhD, and then studied under Biermann. And that same year, she gets married to Otto Mangold, who was Biemann's assistant. 2 years later, she finished her PhD in zoology and published her dissertation titled On the Induction of Embryonic Transplants by Implantation of Organizers from Different Species. However, in 1924, Hilde, her husband, and their infant son moved to Berlin for Otto's job, and tragically, Hilde dies from severe burns from a gas heater explosion in her kitchen at age 25. Despite this tragic loss, Hilde was described as unusually gifted, cheerful, vivacious, and charming by a close friend, Victor Hamburger, and she contributed much to the field of embryology. Due to some unfair treatment at the beginning of her time in Biemann's lab, she was given a project that was unsuccessful and essentially considered grunt work, which unfortunately happened frequently to women in Biemann's lab. Hilde asked for a different project, and Biermann assigned her to one that would help his research in embryology and also became the research she ultimately was known for. In her newly assigned project, Hilde did experiments on different species of minuscule newt embryos that she manipulated with a tiny needle made of glass with a loop made of baby hair on the end. While studying the embryos, she noticed the formation of the dorsal lip, which is a sunken-in section of the embryo. Hilde took a piece of the dorsal lip from one of the newt species embryos and then implanted it onto the other newt species embryo. She intentionally placed the extracted embryo piece on the opposite side of the host's embryo's dorsal lip. So now the newt embryo had 2 dorsal lips forming, one on each side. She then returned them to the water to grow, and unfortunately most died. After 2 years, she was only able to produce 6 viable embryos. The newt embryo had resulted in a single newt with 2 heads. From this experiment, Hilde discovered that this dorsal lip was the most important part of the developing embryo and named the area the organizer. When she placed this organizer part of the embryo from the one species to the other, tadpoles with 2 different heads were produced, showing that the 2 organizers directed the cells to form 2 newts. Hilde is credited with being the discoverer of this organizer, which defined today is the chemical that directs the embryonic development of different organs and tissues. Hilde published her paper on this work and received an almost perfect grade. When it was published, Biermann insisted that his name be listed as an author before Hilde's, even though Biemann's male students were not required to have his name on their published work. Unfortunately, Hilde was not alive to see her work come to fruition. 11 years later, in 1935, Hans Biermann is awarded the Nobel Prize for the discovery of the organizer. While Mangold was mentioned in his acceptance speech and her name is attached to the title of the organizer, Nobel Prizes are not awarded posthumously, so for years, Hilde's contribution has been glossed over and forgotten. However, in recent years, more information about her is coming to light and work is being done to ensure Hilde's work receives credit and her contributions aren't forgotten.